Two guys either side of 50 with one dream to achieve middle-aged sporting glory. This is the Missing Links Golf Show. Andy Walker, Pilgrims. I'm not sure how closely you were listening to that intro, but let me remind you, this is the Missing Links Golf Show. And welcome back, Andy Walker.
I was always wondering where we were doing and what we're doing each Tuesday.
This is the Missing Links Golf Show. It's exactly what it is.
Yeah. Excellent.
No other podcast is the Missing Links Golf Show except this one.
Yeah. Well, look, after a bit over 12 months, that clears up a lot.
Yeah. Excellent. I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Speaking of clearing up a lot, how are you feeling after the New South Wales Country Championships?
Look, I'm feeling good. I've had a bit of a reflection, and as much as I'm still disappointed with the way I finished both rounds, it's given me a little bit of a taste of tournament competition again, and not just the club comps and playing in a couple of senior events, here and there. It's given me a bit of a taste for the real state competitions. And I know we spoke about it over the weekend, but it just leads to the question, where to from here? Like, what does 2025 and beyond look like, and where do we see this whole pilgrimage? Has it changed, and how has it changed, and where's it going?
Very big questions, Andy Walker. Very big questions early in the show.
Yeah. What about yourself?
Look, exactly that. I think I was on a high after the Country Championships. I think that's pretty clear. I really enjoyed the experience, and I felt like I achieved everything that I set out to achieve going into it. To have shot both rounds under 85, in stroke play tournament conditions, I was very happy with that. To have come so close to breaking 80 in the first round, I shot an 80 with two doubles. That could have been a little bit better in that, but nevertheless, still, I was very, very happy with that round of golf, and just the fact that I felt that I belonged there and wasn't out of place. That was probably the biggest thing mentally. But the funny thing is now, a week later, I look at that and I go, I'm happy about coming 91st. No.
Yep.
No, I'm not. I'm not. And I think, yes, it was a good starting point and it was a good experience and there was a lot of really good lessons learned, but I want to be better than that.
Yeah.
And I think that's forced a lot of the thinking, in a conversation that we had earlier this afternoon, whilst I was sitting in the car and you were busily working away. In that conversation, I think that the whole point of that is that was a good experience, but we've now got another tournament, in a few months' time, early next year, in March next year, in sort of, 4 or 5 months. And that's the big one that we've actually started this show for. The purpose of why we were doing this was actually to start that journey of having a crack at the New South Wales Senior Amateur. I want to compete. I want to, I want to be not just making up the numbers at the tail end of the field. And that's forced a reset in my mindset. And I think, to be honest with you, I think that's the theme of this episode really is it's a reset, and it's, we've had this event and we've had differing but similar experiences. And what do we take from that, and where do we go over the next few months before we get to the Senior Amateur in March next year?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really interesting because I thought about this leading up to the New South Wales Country Championships, because I mean, I loved tournament play, playing in New South Wales amateurs, Australian amateurs, made the New South Wales Colts team back in about 1991, I think it was, and played in an interstate series down in Tasmania. Having known you for 24, 25 years, we've been mates for, and knowing your background with cricket, I had a feeling that, and I know I asked you this on the Saturday night.
Yeah.
I had a feeling that when you got the taste for tournament championship play, that it was going to have a pretty profound impact. And I think it has.
Oh, it absolutely has. Like that was one of the things that I enjoyed about that tournament so much, that it reintroduced that feeling of serious competition. And it had the buzz and the vibe of grand final day, or big game match day feel. Like a few butterflies beforehand, and wanting to make sure that you prepare well, and all those sorts of things. And it was so much better than any other golf weekend or weekly competition or anything like that I've ever been involved in. So that was really cool. But at the same time, it's forced a rethink of where I'm at the moment. And, I know before we turned the mics on, I was saying, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, that it's a little bit of an existential crisis that's been forced upon me as a result of this. But where do I start? I think if we went back to a conversation that we had a couple of years ago, and I'm pretty sure it was at Nelson Bay. In fact, I know it was at Nelson Bay. It was the day when I nearly broke 80 and then capitulated over the last couple of holes and shot an 82.
Yep.
And that was probably the best golf that I'd played when we were playing together. So, and you said at the time, obviously your game's improved, and I think you got the potential for getting into single digits with your handicap. And at the time, I would have been off about 15-ish, something along those lines. And to me, that felt like 1,000 miles away. But it also felt like this dream that if I ever achieved a single-digit handicap, that I could almost say, I'm done, thanks, hang up the boots, and I'm happy with what I've achieved in golf. And, to be able to...
Now that you've done that... how do you feel?
It's nowhere near satisfying. It's really not. And that's the funny thing, right? And I think that would ring true for anybody at any level, whatever that sort of obstacle is, whether that's getting to scratch for, someone, say, like yourself, whether that's getting to scratch or +1 or +2, whether for other people that's, getting into the teens, getting down below a shot a hole kind of thing, whatever your target is. I think the unfortunate reality is that when you achieve it, you just set yourself the new benchmark from which you need to continue to improve. Otherwise, how boring would golf become when you step out there and go, oh no, I'm completely fine with this standard, and that's as good as I ever want to achieve. I think part of the reason we enjoy it is this consistent desire for improvement.
Well, that's the growth mindset, isn't it?
Well, yeah, absolutely. And as a golfer, I think it's important to have that. Otherwise, well, I suppose not everybody does. And, I only need to look at as close as my dad to see that, he's happy nudging it around at +30 week in, week out. But mind you, I'd still be happy to be nudging it around the course when I'm 83. So we'll see how that goes. But
although in saying that, I'm hoping that at 83,
you're more like Ted from Mollymook.
Yeah. And still shooting even par for 9 holes. That'd be a pretty amazing,
definitely
experience to have.
Definitely. So it also got me thinking about this concept of why did the allure of becoming a single-digit handicap inspire me, and what was interesting about that, and what was attractive about that. And the honest answer is that I think there's a little bit of ego involved in that.
For sure.
To be able to say when you meet various people and start talking about golf and, do you play golf? Oh, yeah, I play golf. And invariably, do you have a handicap? What do you play off? And when you can say that it's a single digit number, most people, because it is a minority of people that get to that standard, most people go, oh, wow, that's great.
Yeah.
Feel good about yourself, a little pat on the back. That's nice. So what's the driver? Do you want to have the lower handicap because it makes you feel like you're a better player? Or do you want to become a better player because you want to become a better player? And then scores and handicaps will follow.
Yeah, I think there's both, and you can't ignore pride and ego because it is there, and every single one of us has it. And pride and ego drives a lot in human behavior, not just in sport. And yes, it's one of those things where when someone asks you and you're off single figures, yeah, you put the shoulders back and yeah, I'm a single figure handicapper. Let me tell you, when someone asks you and say, oh, I'm off +1, that goes to the next level. And that's the whole thing, is that, you've come from, 15, 16, 17 down into single figures, and the single figure handicapper is then looking at the scratch handicapper and going,
I want to be that guy.
Wouldn't it be awesome
to
be able to have a conversation with someone and say, I'm a scratch handicapper, I'm a +1 handicapper. Yes, you do it for the love of the game, and you do it because, we've got a growth mindset and we want to improve, and we have that in us that we're very competitive, right? Especially when there's sort of two blokes trying to, outdo each other and competing.
Absolutely.
Right? So yes, that's all part of it, but you can't ignore the pride and ego part of it as well, because it's a pretty cool thing to be able to play golf at that level. Right. So it's as you said, it's a minority. Not many people get to that level. So it is pretty cool. And then when you start playing in New South Wales Championships and you start, being competitive in those sorts of events, then again, that's a whole new experience that you're opening yourself up to.
Look, it is. So I guess from my point of view, where I kind of got to out of that was I enjoyed the experience. I really did. And I actually felt like it helped bring better golf out of me than what I play. And it's funny because I do know this as well. Like if I play a social round, like say just a practice round, even if it's 9 holes after work or an 18 on a Sunday or something along those lines, I don't tend to play as well as I do in a competitive round, in a competition round. That's probably because the concentration level's not there, and there's no adrenaline in the system, and I'm sure there's other reasons that would fit behind that. So, and I feel like playing in a tournament like this actually took that to another level. So that was kind of exciting.
But
at the same time, I was never going to be competing, and I'm not talking about competing to win the event necessarily, but at least to be competing. Well, that's an interesting statement as well. I'll come back to that. But at least to be competing to be, sort of top half or top third or something along those lines. The reason I said I'd come back to that is, isn't it interesting that I immediately leap to, well, not competing to win? Why not, right? Like that's, again, limiting thinking. Obviously, it's there's a very big gap at the moment between where my game is and, where the winner was at 11 under. However, why isn't that the goal?
Yeah, look, it's a good question, and part of it is that you have other responsibilities, and those blokes who were shooting under par, they're of the younger generation. They don't have the responsibilities. They don't have the time commitments that we've got as husbands, fathers, people who have full-time employment. That also adds a pretty significant element to how much time you can put back into the game, and whether the time you have available, can you get to that level of shooting 11 under par? I mean, that's a pretty tall order. I think. Yes,
it's probably not going to happen by March, but
no, but certainly I think that being a low single figure to scratch handicapper is absolutely achievable with our current time pressures.
Well, plenty of people do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Plenty of people do.
But getting to a stage where you're shooting somewhere between, 5 and 10 under for 36 holes in a tournament, sort of championship conditions. I mean, that's, I think you've probably got to have a fair bit more time on your hands to be able to put into golf to achieve that level.
I think there's another concept as well, which is the difference between talent and skill that comes into it. What I mean by that is that a skill is something which can be learned, whereas talent is your nature or God-given abilities, which obviously can build skills, but can anyone get to that level of sport? Or is it, obviously everyone has a certain ceiling of potential because of their physical capabilities, level of hand-eye coordination, maybe the twitch muscles, whatever that might be. But there's got to be, not everyone, for example, can run the 100 metres as fast as Usain Bolt, even if they train the same as Usain Bolt. People have got a certain level.
I agree with that to a certain extent. However, I certainly think when you look at, and I know we've talked about the book "Talent is Overrated," really, really good book. And if you go and read that, and they're not saying that talent isn't part of getting to that elite level, but in the vast majority of cases, it's the hard work and it's the dedication to practice and the discipline practice that gets you to that level. Yes, there are some people like Usain Bolt. You look at Michael Phelps, for example, who, is absolutely 100% the epitome of what a swimmer's body should be. Could someone like me at any age, regardless of how much I train, get to the level that Michael Phelps did? Probably not. Well, not probably not. However, having that deliberate practice, I think is a very underrated action to take, and I think that's the most important thing, rather than what would be considered God-given talent.
Yeah. I agree. I absolutely agree. I think the point is what we're trying to do is to squeeze every ounce out of what we've got to offer individually.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're not talking about, getting to the level of Michael Phelps or Usain Bolt or Tiger Woods or, Roger Federer. We're not talking about that level, right? And even shooting, 7 to 10 under in 36 holes, that's nowhere near what, where you put Tiger Woods at. I mean, he'd be shooting, probably 9 or 10 under or maybe more on a course like that.
Yeah.
So certainly in his prime. So you're not talking about that very elite, the greatest of all time type level. What you're talking about is just getting the most out of your own ability and your own talent, and that, why can't that be shooting a few under par?
Correct. The nagging thought is always in the back of my mind of how much have I got in me. So, and you can't know, because when do you know that you've hit your ceiling? I'm sure I haven't. At this point, I'd be relatively disappointed if at the age of 49 that this was the best golf I was ever going to play. I don't think that would be the case.
No, I don't think it is either.
But you don't know where that level is, right? Is it, getting down to a 5 or a 2 or a scratch or an 8? I don't know. And that's almost irrelevant. I think sometimes that's limiting thinking that we need to push to the side. But the question, and it was an interesting one. It was a very simple question, which I stumbled across in a book that I've started reading this week, which I've only just started, so there's no point talking about how good the book is, and I haven't even got to this chapter yet, but it was an interesting question. And the question was simple, and it was, am I enough?
Yeah.
And that prompted some pondering because it made me think back to round 2 in Parks, playing with those other 3 guys that were, sort of down around the scratch level, and we're just pumping the ball so much further. And then you kind of go, physically, do I need to shift? Like, is that an issue? Can I get to those levels with the game that I've got at the moment, or does something fundamentally need to shift? And that, I think the honest answer to that is it probably, you probably don't need to be hitting at 300 just to get down to close to scratch.
No,
really don't.
I don't think you do at all.
So that's probably not that big an issue in terms of distance. I don't think I need to go full Bryson on this one, but that'd be an interesting experiment. However, definitely there needs to be a bit of an overhaul of skills to get to.
Yeah, look, and I think, we're never going to play this game for a living, right? So, hitting at 300 plus is not a necessity for our goals and what we want out of the game, right? So get into scratch when we're playing it, even, playing New South Wales Championships, being a scratch marker and being competitive in those events, you don't need to be hitting at 300. In fact, very few, if any, hit at 300 in those events, and certainly not in the senior amateur ranks as well, which is sort of where our goals sit. So, we're not even sort of talking about New South Wales amateur or Australian amateur. Again, probably a little bit different when if we try and compete at that level. But at the senior level, I think what you've got now and even how far you hit it now is more than enough to be able to compete in the way that we're talking about competing.
Yeah, well, what's interesting, right? I went and I had a little bit of a look at my strokes gained data at the moment versus where it was when we started the show.
Yep.
Because you might remember back in episode 2 when I think we called it starting lines, when we were talking about what our levels were at that point and what our development plan was going to be. And so that's about a year ago, right? So at that point, where were we? I started putting and worked my way up. My putting strokes gained was at minus 0.25 strokes, so a quarter of a shot. So putting was actually the strength of my game.
Yep.
Which we've always talked about being a surprise. But anyway, there you go. It's and so that was at the time on the last 5 rounds. So I've checked this against the last 10 rounds, and the reason I've done that is because I've got a lot of 9-hole, twilight comp stuff in there.
Yep.
So at the moment, my putting is sitting at minus 1.14. So it's actually a little bit worse, but that fluctuates. I'm not too concerned about that. That kind of goes up and down depending on other things. At the start of the show, my short game strokes gained was at minus 2.0. Now it's currently sitting at minus 3.73. So that's blown out.
Yeah, right.
I would imagine if I did that over the last few rounds, sort of post wedge fitting and short game lesson with Jake, it's probably better than that.
Yep.
But that was interesting. Approach play, this is where it gets more interesting, Andy Walker. At the start of the show, approach play was minus 4.61. It's currently minus 2.95.
Okay. So you've halved that effectively.
Close to. Tee shots when we started the show was at minus 2.04. Now it's minus 0.04. So it's basically scratch.
Yeah.
So what that tells me, and this is probably not all that surprising given the amount of work that I've been doing in the Missing Links Golf Show High Performance Centre Central West, is that my ball striking has considerably improved.
Yep.
But short game hasn't necessarily improved. So actually it's gone a little bit backwards, but I feel like that's the next frontier. So yeah, I guess my honest answer is I haven't improved as much as I would have liked over the last year.
Yep.
It's probably the reality. However, I feel like I am a far better player now than I was then.
So do you feel as though that your current handicap and maybe strokes gain data is not really a true reflection of the improvements that you've made?
That's probably what I'm saying.
From that?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think at the moment because at the time when we started the show and I was at a 10, and I think I was probably overachieving numerically at that point.
Yep.
At the moment, as we stand here today, I'm at 8.2 and I feel like I'm better than that.
Yep.
Whereas when I was at a 10, I probably didn't feel like I was quite good enough for that number, the way that I was playing.
Yep.
I mean, the numbers don't lie though, like the numbers are what the numbers are. But I feel like I feel like a year ago maybe I was chasing playing to that level, whereas now I'm probably, I'm probably feel like I should be better.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I would say a year ago, there would have been absolutely no chance that you would have shot 80, 84 at, New South Wales Country Championships in tournament conditions.
Absolutely. No chance. Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes more than data shows. You've got to look at some things behind the data and see where your performances lie in certain situations. Because as there's shooting, 80 or 84 in a club competition, and then there's shooting 80, 84 in a tournament championship conditions, and they're
100%.
very, very different.
100%. Course setup is different.
Yeah.
All of those sorts of things. So, yeah, I think it's hard because it's another one of those frustrating plateaus, Andy Walker.
Yeah.
But it's sort of a numerical one. Anyway, perhaps that means that another improvement, leap is on the cards. I don't know. I can hope.
Yep.
Where are you at?
Yeah, look, that's a very good question. I feel as though this year I've had a lot of ups and downs. I felt at the start of the year was fairly frustrating for me because I was still shooting, low 80s, and I felt like I was way better than that, and then I had a run where I was playing well, but I had a couple of poor finishes, and then all of a sudden it all came together for a few rounds. And obviously the highlight was the 2 under that I had at the end of April, and that proved to me that I can still play at the level that I was playing at in the 1990s, right? And I've still got it there, and if I did the work, I would be able to get back down to shooting, subpar. So that gave me a lot of confidence in what I was doing, and mentally it changed how I looked at my game. Right. But obviously with the injury through June, July, August, that was a pretty major setback. And then, we sort of discussed a couple of times around I've sort of been protecting my, those injuries that I had in those areas, which means I'd sort of gone back to some old habits, which were identified with a couple of the technology pieces that we've integrated into our high performance centers. So, yeah, certainly my level of understanding of my own swing is a lot better than what it was. I've bought a couple of instruction courses where the instructor breaks down the swing. I've been to YouTube University, as we've discussed, to have a look at how different coaches break down their swing. I've then looked at a couple of the top tour professionals and compared them to where I'm at and the different positions that I'm at in my swing, which has really been an interesting exercise to understand the deficiencies that I have in my swing and why I've always felt like I've fought my swing a little bit when I get under pressure. I feel as though I can get under par and my game is good enough to get under par, but then I feel like I fight my swing and it breaks down and it very easily sort of comes and goes, and I don't have the consistency to be able to, get to 2-3 under and keep going and get it to 5 or 6 under. I mean, I've shot 4 under twice in my history back when I was playing competitively in the 90s, but I never got to the really deep under par. And I think there's a very good reason for that. And obviously, I had a certain image that I wanted to play golf in as a young bloke, and that was very heavily influenced by the likes of Jack Nicklaus and wanting to hit a fade. But the way I did that in the sort of coming over the top and the early extension and the steep downswing plane, they created a lot of issues back then, but they've also, of course, they've been grooved into my swing. They've created a lot of issues for me now, and being able to perform in the way that I want to when I get to those stages of being 1, 2, 3 under par. So, and that's the reason why I embarked on those swing changes earlier in the year. And it's why, now that I've had a chance to reflect a little bit, and I even think my finish last weekend in the New South Wales Country Championships was as a result of just not having the swing base that I want, in that having my downswing plane shallower than what my backswing is, and those things I think are very fundamental to be able to A, play consistently, but B, have your swing perform under pressure. So they're probably, the big things for me moving forward. And I'm sort of glad that we've got a couple of months to be able to just step back and do some practice so that I know where I want my swing to be and I can feel it at different points, but it's just not consistent enough. I just haven't done the reps to be able to get it to where I want it to be. Right. And that reflects in, if you look at my strokes gained performance over, say the last 10 rounds, my driving is minus 1.1. My approach play is minus 1.7. Right. And when I look at the top 3 insights that Arcos is giving me on what to work on, 2 out of the 3 are par 3 tee shots and approach game 100, 150 meters. So that says to me that my swing's not where it needs to be, and the data's backing that up. So yeah, so that's probably my big thing over the next few months. I feel like I've made pretty big strides with my short game, and I still feel as though I need to make some improvements from say 30 to 100 meters. That's your scoring zone, and I'm going to be working hard. And we'll talk about this next week, the technology that I've invested in to be able to get my 30 to 100 meter shots really dialed in. the other thing I said 2 out of the 3 in the Arcos dashboard is the third thing is 0 to 3 meter putts, and that's your sort of, you know, you're finishing your money shots, where you need to be making, you know, especially inside a meter, you really need to be making the vast majority of that. And I still
99% plus.
Yeah, I still feel as though I'm not good enough to be able to. I make a lot of them, but I still want to improve. And I can see by my strokes gain data that I do need to improve in that area. So they're the sort of things that I'm looking to improve next year. I mean, I look back to where I was, certainly from a handicap perspective 12 months ago. I was 4.7. My current handicap is 2.1, which is the lowest it's been in 30 years. So am I happy as to where my game's at? Yes, to a certain extent. I think the injury that I had through June, July, August threw a bit of a spanner in the works, and considering the injury, I think I've had a really good year, and it's given me a lot of confidence to move into 2025 and feel as though I can be competitive, and certainly competitive in the senior amateur ranks. And there are some pretty, you know, I've looked at and thought about 4 different areas, 4 different goals for 2025 in regards to tournament play that I'd really like to achieve. So, yeah, there's a lot of good things to look forward to, but the good thing is that I know what I need to be doing and where I need to be able to achieve the goals that I've got and that I've set. But I've also, this year has given me the confidence and the mindset to be able to say, you know what, I can do this. I know I can do this. I know I can get to that level. So I don't have the questions, the doubt questions to be able to get there. I think for me, it's more about making sure I'm disciplined and I'm allocating the time to be able to, you know, put those reps in and make the improvements that I need to make.
Yep. I want to come back to your putting point, because I've actually you've inspired me to look up those stats and see where I'm at on those various distances. Because one of the questions is like, at what point do you go to 50% make or miss? At what distance? So anyway, currently my putting stats inside a meter, so tapping up to a meter, which is what's a meter, 3.5 feet.
Yep.
I'm at 98%.
That's pretty good.
Yep. I think that feels right. From 1 to 2 meters, so that's at, say, 3.5 to 7 feet, I'm at 66%.
Okay.
And then in the 2 to 3 meter range, so that's where you're talking about 7.5 to 10 footers, I am at that point at 50%.
Well, I mean, that's still pretty good.
I think I'm pretty happy with that. What's interesting is ShotScope is telling me that my 0 to 1 meter result at 98% is bang on. I think we're against a scratch player here. In terms of the benchmark, the 1 to 2 meter is 7 percentage points below where I should be. So I should be at 73%. I'm at 66. But the 2 to 3 is 4 percentage points above. So I'm at 50, and obviously the average is at 46 at that point. Yep. So I think all in all, that's pretty good.
Yeah. See, if I break down, and Arcos breaks it down into strokes gained, 0 to 3 is minus 1.9. 3 to 8 meters is plus 0.3. 8 to 15 meters is plus 0.4, and 15 plus meters is 0. So when you look at outside of 3 meters, I'm doing really, really well, and I've got a positive strokes gained against a scratch handicapper, but inside 0 to 3 meters, it's minus 1.9. So that's where I really need to do a bit of work.
Yeah, see, I can do the same on strokes gained. So inside 3 meters, I'm minus 0.1. From 3 to 6, I am plus 0.09. So it's pretty much an offset. 6 to 9 meters is bang on scratch, and then 9 meters plus I'm losing 0.7 of a shot, but I don't know how many shots that's talking about. That would indicate a speed issue more than anything else, I would think, because that's where 3 putts are coming in.
Yeah. The other interesting stat that Arcos is giving me in regards to a scoring breakdown, there's a comparison birdies, pars, bogeys, and double bogeys plus. And this is on average per round. So I have an average of 2.4 birdies per round. Okay, so a scratch handicapper has 2.2. So I'm ahead from on a birdies from a birdies perspective. Pars, I have 9.3 pars per round. Scratch handicapper is 10.5. Bogeys, I have 4.5 bogeys per round. Scratch handicapper is 4.6. But here's the big one. Double bogeys. Scratch handicapper has 0.7 per round. I have 1.8. So I effectively have, on average, you could round it up, you could say 2 double bogeys or worse per round. And that's, when we talk to John Sherman about, the war against double bogeys, that's also a really big focus that I think I need is to be able to, and I think for me, it's just getting rid of those horrible shots that I hit. I mean, I feel as though I hit a lot of good shots, and I don't know where it comes from. I just hit these awful shots at different times, and I need to, I think, get my game to a point where you'll never completely eliminate them, but 2 double bogeys or worse per round. I mean, that's always going to make it hard because they're your killers in a round.
Yes, absolutely. I don't have it broken down by the number of holes, but I've got percentages. So apparently my percentages are where will we start? We'll start with birdies. It says 1% eagles, but that's incorrect because that eagle was actually a birdie. That was just ShotScope not understanding the par on the hole.
Yeah, right.
So that would actually make it 10% birdies. So what's that? 1.8.
1.8, yep.
Birdies per round. Feels higher than, although I have had a few rounds recently with a number of birdies in it. 38% pars. So that's probably about 8 pars. 38% bogeys, so probably the same thing. And then 15% doubles or worse, which is 2 to 2.5.
Yeah, yep. So it's a similar story, really. I mean, if you're certainly looking to get down into those low single figures and scratch, I mean, the doubles and worse, they're the killers.
They're the killers, but what's interesting, and I'll look back on, for example, round 2 of the second round in Parks, and in that round, that total round, not just in the second 9, but in that total round, I think I had 3 doubles all up, and that that hurt, but it was actually just the leaking bogeys. Constantly leaking bogeys actually really hurt. Just the odd shot drop here and there. And quite often the doubles are the result of like a really bad shot that puts you in a position where you just can't get back on track to even scrounge a bogey out of it. I mean, there's times when you do, and obviously they're bogeys, they're not doubles. But it's usually the result of a really bad shot and or maybe a penalty or something like that. The ones that are super frustrating is when you get a really good drive away, you hit the fairway, you're in good shape, and you make bogey from 120 out in the center of the fairway.
Yeah. I 100% agree with you, which is why, when I mentioned I still don't feel as though I'm good enough from 30 to 100 meters, that's, they're not just your birdie setups. The really frustrating part of not making a score is making a bogey from that range.
Yeah.
So again, I think that I do that way too often. And I'd really like to sharpen that part of my game up as well.
Yeah. And for me, there's two things in that. One of it is, there's probably three things. One is your approach play itself. So, capitalizing and hitting the green more often from that situation. The other two parts of it is when you do hit the green, but you're a long way away, is improving lag putting to make sure of a 2-putt and not have a 3-putt bogey. How frustrating is a 3-putt bogey? And then the other part of it is the times when you miss the green is actually getting more efficient and, getting more up and downs rather than, a missed green being a bogey, which more often than not it is. So I think all roads lead to, on that one, well, 2 of the 3 roads lead to short game improvement. Thanks, Dave McClelland. And the other is around ball striking. So it's, I think it's pretty clear where the improvement needs to lie.
Okay. Well, what about mental game? Where are you at from a mental game perspective? Because
I'm glad you asked.
I've got a couple of things that I've got listed down for my mental game, but I'd like to hear yours.
I am glad you asked. I think the very first thing that I need to do at the moment, it's not so much on-course mental game. It's getting my head right based on the conversation that we've had so far in this episode.
So it's perception, yeah.
There's part of that. It's also just processing this kind of whole reset mindset and kind of getting the goal setting straight and getting, that better understanding and acceptance of where I'm at the moment and where I want to get to. So I think there's part of that. I feel like my mindset on the course has improved enormously. I'm not getting angry. I'm not getting, the emotional ups and downs. It was interesting in parks for the first time. I was trying to use a bit of a breathing technique in just to keep regulated and keep calm. And the reason for that is because I was getting a bit overexcited early about how amazing this is and all those, sorts of things. And, oh, wow, that was a good shot and I've done that and isn't that great? And then going, don't get ahead of yourself. And I actually felt that very, very, very useful. So that was a very interesting thing to learn. But I think the getting better at the assessment, decision-making element of a shot and then the commitment, execution and acceptance review process, I need to do that probably a little bit better. I don't think that's where it has to get to yet. And I think I was guilty a few times, for example, on hole number 1, which was, I don't know, the 8th or something I think we played on day 2, where I ended up making a double because I had a difficult chip and I think I rushed it and I thinned it over the green. So I just think some of those sorts of things could be a lot better. Is a pretty long-winded answer. Sorry about that, Andy Walker, but I think there's good parts, but there's also improvement still.
Yep. Well, I've got I've actually got three elements to how I want to improve my mental game. Firstly, similar to you, in that I still think I need to work on my acceptance.
You do.
And not so much the acceptance, just in normal play, but when things start going against me. I know I do get down on myself a bit, and those last few holes last weekend, I mean, I was pretty gutted in relation to those, and
Yeah.
I understand that that's because I care, but it really affected me, especially on day two. Like and I actually got quite negative about my game, and I had to actually, after we finished, I had to actually take some time out before I could finish my scorecard and come back in and have a drink with the blokes that I played with. And that says to me that I just need to just work on how I accept what's happened on the golf course and understand that, okay, I've just done that and that's just the way it is. Yeah, I'm disappointed, but it's done and I can't do anything about it. I can't go back and change that result.
So, very good friend of the show, Josh Nichols from the Mental Golf Show, who jumped in and gave a bit of an answer for us in the lead up to that tournament, talked about this point.
Yep.
And I liked his explanation when he was talking about acceptance, and I hope I do it justice, but his explanation was acceptance is seeing things as they are, not how you wish they would be.
Mm.
And that doesn't mean that there isn't an emotional response still to that. You can see them as they are and get very upset with that. And you can also then see your own reaction to that as it is.
Yep.
And not wish that it was different or, put pressure on yourself to be different. But I think part of it was that, like you're playing a good round and looking at a good score and almost banking that score and then ruining it in the last couple of holes.
Mm.
And that frustration is that difference between the expectation and the reality. It's the wishing that those last few holes went differently rather than seeing them as they were and seeking to understand how and why that happened. Now, that sounds very easy when we're a week separated away from the incident. It's very hard to do at the time, but I don't know if that's helpful at all, but that was...
Yeah, look, I did listen to Josh Nichols' episode when he talked about that, and he talked about the concept of, you're halfway through the round and you're thinking, I'm having a good score, right? Well, but you're really not having a good score.
You don't have it yet.
All you are is a certain number of strokes through a certain number of holes, right?
Yeah.
It's at the end of the round that you add it all up and understand if you've had a good score, but until you sink the last putt, you haven't got that yet. So yeah, I completely understand what he was talking about and where you were coming from, and it's a very valid point, because you're right. With 3 holes to play, I didn't have a good score.
No,
right? It was that I was a certain number of shots after 15 holes, and that was all it was.
You'd put yourself in a position where you could make a good score.
Yes.
Definitely. But you didn't possess it to then be taken from you.
Correct.
To then feel angry about the fact that it was taken from you, which is probably what's kind of emotionally going on.
For sure. For sure.
So anyway, wow, that got deep.
So the other two things that I'd really that are on the list is going back and reviewing and doing some more with mental golf type. I did the level 1 and I never got back to doing more than that. And I'm still keen to follow up with Paul Salter in regards to doing some hypnotherapy. I'd really like to just understand and maybe go through that process to be able to see if it works as we've heard that it does. So I think those two things are definitely on the agenda for 2025 as well.
Have you ever considered seeing if there's anyone, say, more local to do any hypnosis work?
Yes. Thank you for bringing that up. Pilgrims, let's just say that I did contact an Australian-based hypnotherapy service who, I had a Zoom session with, and it turned out to be not as I expected. It because on their website they did talk about sports performance and in particular golf, and I thought, these guys would be really good.
Yeah, and
no, they weren't.
So good.
In fact, the focus wasn't sports. The focus wasn't golf.
No. There's so much content that it's not appropriate to share in a public forum about this. But
no, we had a very, very good conversation about it, and but it's not appropriate to share.
Yeah, I think we really can't offer any more details than that. What I would say though to anyone listening, if you're curious, is just spend a moment thinking about all of the ways in which this type of an interaction could potentially go wrong. And you're pretty much on the money.
Yeah. So anyway, I've come back to maybe thinking that Paul Salter is
pretty good after all.
Yeah.
Well, we like Paul. We had a great chat with Paul, so he's a good guy.
He was awesome. He was awesome, and it was more me sort of thinking is that maybe.
My own time zone could be helpful,
Zoom's great, but maybe I could actually meet that person like in
wouldn't that have been nice?
Like face to face and all the rest. But no, let's just stick to Zoom, eh?
Oh, that's so good. I enjoyed that story so much. So it's been quite the ramble, this episode, but I think it's a conversation that we've needed to have because it is a bit of a case of we've been rollicking along in one kind of direction, and I think, in fairness, a lot of our energy, and I know this was the case for me, but a lot of our energy was put towards preparing and getting to parks and competing in the country championships, and rightly so, because, that was a big deal, and, it's definitely the biggest tournament I've ever played in. So I think that was good focus, but now that that's done, it's definitely the time to take a step back, take stock, think about what we've learned, think about what we need to focus on, and think about our preparation for what is going to be really the flagship tournament for this show on hopefully a yearly basis to come, which is the New South Wales Senior Amateur Championships. And I think, I feel like it's been a bit of an epiphany, like just this, wow, where am I at? Where do I need to get to? What can I do between now and then to try and get there? And how can I have a much better crack at it rather than being a guy at the tail end of the field that makes up the numbers?
Yep. So do you have any other, obviously there's the New South Wales Senior Amateur, but what about sort of outside of that? Is there anything that you've thought about that could, because that's one tournament in March. We know that it's the first week of March. We know that it's at Pacific Dunes and Nelson Bay. Which is going to be great. It's only just down the road from me, so about an hour or so, which I'm quite happy with.
Yeah. Return the favour from last week.
Yeah. What about around that is, obviously the New South Wales Country Championships next year will be a target.
Absolutely.
But you also haven't played in any senior amateur events, just the regular events. So is that going to be something that you look at next year? Yeah,
I think it will. Absolutely. I think it will. And I think there'll be a good opportunity to do that with a few potentially, we'll have to have a look at the calendar. I'm not sure what that looks like for next year yet, but I would absolutely like to play in a number of those events. They're generally speaking 1-day events.
There's a couple that are 2-day events, and then obviously there's the bigger ones like the New South Wales Senior Amateur, and there was the one at Newcastle and Horizons, which was over a couple of days in August. So there are a couple of bigger ones, but certainly, the vast majority of them are a single day, but they're also midweek as well. A lot of them are, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
Yeah,
not many on Friday, but there's a few there's a few.
I think it's achievable. I mean, it will obviously be a little bit of a challenge just with working commitments and those types of things. But midweek is actually, in some respects, a little bit more achievable at times than weekends. So
absolutely.
I think that's definitely on the cards. A few others on the cards for me, of course. You mentioned another crack at the country championships, and I think there's no doubt that we'll go back to that. We don't know where that's going to be yet, but that was such a good event. I think we'll be doing that again. On a smaller level, another tilt at the Macquarie Cup, local event out here in the Central West, definitely on the cards. Possibly the Hahn Open next year at Country League in Orange, depending on when the timing of that is. Another one which is a really, really good event is the Bathurst Open. Bathurst is not a senior event. That's open to anybody, but that's another, pretty sure that's another Varden event. And it's a good event. So there are a few opportunities. I feel like, though, one of the things we need to do is sit down, look at the calendars and just map out the year and see what's around and what's possible and what we're going to target.
So one thing to keep in mind is for the senior open order of merit, right? So the SUM, that's 14 senior events. So it's your top 14 senior events, and I think we talked about this earlier in the year that you get allocated a number of points depending on where you finish in the field, and it's your top 14 that go towards the leaderboard. So if you play more than 14, really all you're playing for is to really get rid of those sort of bottom scores to be able to bump up your points. So for me, getting 14 senior amateur events next year so that my SUM leaderboard, that SUM order of merit is full, that's also a pretty big goal for me. And the last one, and the one that was sort of got this year that I'd love to achieve next year is the New South Wales Senior Open. To be able to play alongside some of the legends of our game, I think would be a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, it would. That would be awesome. I mean, it's a good goal. I hadn't really thought about trying to get 14 rounds in during the year, but let's see how many we can do.
Yeah, well, that also brings in, because you talked about, the open Varden events, what do you prioritize? So that's going to be an interesting discussion around, do we focus just on the senior events? I mean, the Macquarie Cup is something that I'd love to do again next year. The Hahn Open, we've played in the Hahn Open a few times, and that's a really good event. Haven't played Bathurst for a very, very long time.
It's a good course.
Probably close to 35 years, I reckon it's been since I played Bathurst.
Yeah.
But I think there are some priorities that we need to really put in place to be able to get our senior events in the calendar.
Yes. Well, that is a job for another day, I think, Andy Walker. But I think if we can start January with a clear picture of where we want to get to in terms of those events, then that would definitely be good. I think for the next episode, we need to probably come back with a little bit more detail about what activities we'll be undertaking and what this development plan looks like to get ourselves in shape, and potentially some element of accountability towards that, that we hold each other to. And it's exciting. I think let's really look at this as the improvement phase.
Yeah. And as we talked about, I think the next few months, it's good that there's a couple of quieter months and over Christmas, and it'll, I think, lay a really good foundation, and we'll have a really good framework to be able to launch into next year.
Sounds like a plan, Andy Walker. Wow. Pilgrims, thanks for listening. That was a cathartic session of confession.
There was a little bit, wasn't there?
It was. Andy Walker, anything else that you kind of want to share before we potentially wrap up for this fantastic episode? of the Missing Links Golf Show?
No, I think we're done. There was a lot in that, and I think there's a lot to be digested. And yeah, I'm looking forward to really mapping out 2025 and continuing on with our improvement journey.
Absolutely. I think next episode we'll probably come back with a bit more detail on improvement plans, possibly some of the tools that we might be using to achieve those goals, and start setting ourselves some targets. I think that's what's next to come.
Yeah. There's a bit of technology in there, which has been very exciting additions to the High Performance Centre.
Yes, it is exciting. But between now and then, Andy Walker, what else is there left to do?
Well, there's really only one thing left to do, and it's just a constant that we do all week, and it is to rock out, Pilgrims.
Nice. Thanks for listening to us today. We love hearing from our pilgrims, so please reach out to us through any of the links in the show notes. We know golf is hard, so we hope we can help you shoot better scores and inspire you to keep trying. Rock on, pilgrims.